Welcome to your Health Facts podcast. We're going to be exploring the world of coffee
hmm
and how it impacts our health. You might think you know everything about coffee, but we're going to uncover some surprising facts about how coffee interacts with our bodies.
So coffee beans actually originate from a cherry fruit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that explains why, lightly roasted coffees, they have a fruitier aroma and have a higher acidity.
Uh-huh.
When we talk about coffee, we encounter two main types.
Okay.
Gourmet coffee, which is primarily made from Arabica beans, and then you have your instant or blended coffees, which often use Robusta beans.
Okay.
Roasting these beans, you see, significantly impacts the flavor and potential health benefits.
I see.
We categorize roasts into four levels: light, medium dark, and dark.
Okay.
Light roasts retain more of the bean's natural fruity flavors, nutrients, and acidity.
Okay.
Medium roasts are heated until they produce a first crack sound, and they are slightly less acidic.
Interesting.
Medium dark and dark roasts undergo a second crack, which releases oils from the beans. These darker roasts, known for their bolder flavor, retain fewer nutrients.
Makes sense.
So, it really depends on what you're going for.
Yeah. I've noticed that like the darker roasts are definitely less acidic.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've heard that it's actually best to wait a little bit after waking up before having that first cup of coffee.
That's right.
Is it true?
Yeah, it's best to wait about an hour and a half
Okay.
after waking up before enjoying that first cup.
So why is that?
Well, caffeine interferes with adenosine,
Okay.
which is a neurochemical that helps regulate your sleep cycle.
I see.
So drinking coffee immediately upon waking can disrupt this natural process and lead to a caffeine crash later on.
So you're saying that if I have a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, I might actually end up more tired later in the day.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm definitely guilty of that, I have to admit.
A lot of us are. It's such a habit.
Yeah. And another thing I've heard about coffee is that it can affect how our bodies absorb iron from food.
Yeah, that's right. Did you know that coffee can reduce iron absorption from your food by as much as 39%?
Wow, that's a lot. I had no idea it was that significant.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
So what's the best way to make sure I'm still getting enough iron if I'm a coffee drinker?
Well, to maximize iron absorption from your meals, you should enjoy your coffee an hour beforehand.
So basically have my coffee and then wait an hour before I eat.
Exactly. That way the caffeine won't interfere as much with the iron absorption.
That's a good tip. I have to try that.
You should.
Okay, so we've talked about how coffee affects our sleep and our iron absorption.
Right.
But what about caffeine itself? I mean, we all know that caffeine is what gives us that energy boost from coffee.
Right.
But what exactly is it?
So caffeine is actually really interesting. It acts as a natural pesticide for the coffee plant.
Really? I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. It protects the coffee plant from insects and other plants with its antibacterial and antifungal properties.
Oh, no.
So when you consume coffee, 90% of the caffeine is absorbed into your bloodstream
Uh-huh.
within 20 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
And it primarily affects your brain.
Giving you that familiar energy boost.
Precisely. Now, here's another interesting fact. Caffeine is found in over 60 different plants,
Oh, wow.
including those used to make Coca-Cola, cola nuts, and yerba mate.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's not just coffee that has caffeine.
No, not at all.
So we know that coffee can sometimes get a bad rap for its potential negative effects,
Yeah,
but there are also a lot of studies highlighting its health benefits.
there are.
One of the things I read about is that coffee has anti-inflammatory properties.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So one of the key health benefits of coffee lies in its anti-inflammatory properties.
Okay.
These are attributed to its abundance of antioxidants and polyphenols, particularly a compound called chlorogenic acid.
Okay.
These compounds combat inflammation and protect your cells from damage.
That's good to know.
Yeah, but the roasting process can significantly reduce these beneficial compounds,
Oh, really?
especially in darker roasts.
So even though I might prefer the taste of a darker roast, I might be missing out on some of those anti-inflammatory benefits.
Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind is that adding dairy products to your coffee can also hinder the absorption of polyphenols.
Interesting. So what's the best way to have coffee if I want to get the most of those polyphenols?
Well, if you prefer a creamy coffee, consider using soy milk as it doesn't interfere with polyphenol absorption.
Oh, really? Why is that?
It has to do with the way our gut microbiome processes soy protein. It doesn't bind to the polyphenols in the same way that dairy proteins do.
That's good to know.
Oh,
I'm a big fan of soy milk anyway.
there you go. So you're already ahead of the game.
That's great to hear.
So we've been talking about some of the compounds in coffee and how they affect our bodies.
Mm.
And, our liver is our primary metabolic organ. It works tirelessly to detoxify our body.
Yeah, it's amazing how much our liver does for us.
It really is. And studies show that people who are exposed to liver toxins like alcohol, cigarettes, or the hepatitis C virus may actually benefit from coffee consumption.
Really? So coffee can actually be good for our liver.
Well, it can help. Coffee's ability to reduce oxidative DNA damage, increase the death of virus-infected cells, and reduce fibrosis actually contributes to a lower risk of liver cancer.
That's pretty incredible. So even though it might not be a cure-all, it sounds like coffee can play a role in protecting our liver.
Exactly. It's all about balance and understanding how different things affect our bodies.
Right. And speaking of balance, we've talked about some of the potential downsides of coffee, like how it can affect sleep and iron absorption.
Right.
But coffee has also gained recognition for its potential role in weight management.
It has.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Research suggests that drinking 2 cups of dark roast coffee daily can help overweight individuals lose weight.
Interesting. So it's not just about cutting calories. Coffee itself might actually help with weight loss.
That's what the research is suggesting. But there's a bit of a caveat here. Coffee also contains compounds called caffeine and coel,
Okay.
and these compounds can raise cholesterol levels.
Oh, that's not so good.
Well, it's not ideal if you already have high cholesterol, but the good news is that using a paper filter when brewing coffee can remove up to 90% of these compounds.
So those paper filters really make a difference.
They do. Brewing methods like boiling, French press, Turkish coffee, and even espresso can significantly elevate cholesterol levels.
Okay, so I guess it's not just about the type of coffee, but also how we brew it.
Exactly. Percolated and instant coffees have a minimal impact on cholesterol, even without a paper filter.
So if someone has high cholesterol, what would you recommend?
I would advise them to choose dark roast, coarsely ground coffee, and always use a paper filter. If they're still concerned about their cholesterol levels, they might want to consider switching to tea.
Okay, so we've talked about the liver, weight management, and cholesterol.
We have.
Now let's move on to another common issue that many coffee drinkers experience:
Okay.
heartburn.
Ah, yes, heartburn. A lot of people associate coffee with heartburn.
Exactly, and I've always wondered why that is.
Well, it has to do with caffeine. Caffeine can relax the esophageal sphincter.
The what?
The esophageal sphincter. It's the muscle that separates your esophagus from your stomach.
Okay.
When this muscle relaxes, stomach acid can flow back up into the esophagus, leading to that burning sensation.
Oh, I see. So it's like the caffeine is making that muscle too relaxed and allowing the acid to escape.
Exactly. Now, here's something interesting. Darker roasts are actually associated with less stomach acid production compared to lighter roasts.
So if you're prone to heartburn, opting for a darker roast might be a good idea.
It could be, although I should clarify that low-acid coffee hasn't actually been proven to be more effective for heartburn relief. It's more about the roast level and the caffeine content.
Right, so it's not a guaranteed solution, but it might help.
Exactly.
So we've talked about some of the potential downsides of coffee, like how it can affect sleep, iron absorption, cholesterol, and heartburn.
Right.
But let's shift gears and talk about a potential benefit that I found really interesting:
Okay.
asthma.
Oh, yes. Coffee and asthma.
So I read that moderate coffee consumption, up to 4 cups per day, has been linked to a reduced risk of asthma.
That's correct.
And many people with asthma also report finding relief from their symptoms after drinking coffee. Why is that?
Well, it's because caffeine acts as a bronchodilator.
Maybe.
It helps to open up the airways.
Oh, I see. So it's similar to how some asthma medications work.
Exactly. In fact, theophylline, a medication commonly prescribed for asthma control, is actually a derivative of caffeine.
Wow, I had no idea. But it's important to remember that while coffee might provide some relief from asthma symptoms, it's not a substitute for proper medical management.
Absolutely. Identifying and managing asthma triggers is crucial for long-term asthma control.
So coffee can be a helpful tool, but it's not a cure.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about how coffee affects our liver, weight, cholesterol, heartburn, and even asthma.
We have. It's fascinating how many different ways coffee interacts with our bodies.
It really is. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on a few groups of people who might need to be more cautious about their coffee consumption.
Okay.
So first off, individuals with sleep issues should be cautious as caffeine can exacerbate insomnia.
That's right.
And if you metabolize caffeine slowly, you may be more susceptible to adverse effects,
Right.
things like high blood pressure, heart attack, diabetes, and kidney dysfunction with increased coffee consumption.
That's important to note.
Yeah, and this is especially true for individuals with a specific genetic variant called CYP1A2AC, or CC genotype, which affects how quickly your body breaks down caffeine.
Right. So if you know you have this genotype, it's really important to be mindful of your coffee intake.
Absolutely. And individuals with glaucoma or a family history of the condition should also limit or avoid coffee altogether.
Yes, because caffeine can increase eye pressure.
And caffeine can also worsen urinary incontinence.
That's another important consideration.
And finally, individuals with compromised heart health, especially those with heart vessel diseases, should consult with their cardiologist before consuming coffee.
It's always a good idea to talk to your doctor if you have any concerns about how coffee might affect your health.
So as we've learned today, the world of coffee is complex and its effects on our health are multifaceted.
Definitely.
From the type of bean and roast level to the brewing method and individual health considerations, there's a lot to consider when it comes to how this beloved beverage interacts with our bodies.
It's not just about taste. It's about understanding how different types of coffee can impact your health in different ways.
Exactly. So it's all about finding that balance and enjoying coffee in a way that works best for you.
Absolutely. Remember to pay attention to how your body responds to coffee and adjust your consumption accordingly. And of course, consulting with your healthcare professional is always recommended if you have any concerns or specific health conditions that might be affected by coffee consumption.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise on coffee and its health impacts. I know I've learned a lot.
It was my pleasure.
And for our listeners, if you're looking for more insightful information on health and wellness, be sure to visit us at yourhealthfacts.com. Thanks for tuning in.